Okay, hi everybody. How are you doing? How's the conference so far? Good, huh? Yeah. All right, so it's 4 in the afternoon. You're already after a few talks, and we'll try to see something a bit more dynamic to see how we progressify our web applications with Angular. And this is going to be live demo session. So hopefully everything will be okay. Of course, I went to my private room and prayed a little bit to the God of live demos. And so usually she hears me. She listens to me. So hopefully also today. Okay. So I'm Shmuela Jacobs. And just a little bit about myself before we start. I'm a front-end developer, a consultant, and a trainer. I've been working with front-end for the past few years, 3 years, I think. I started working with Angular.js, and of course, now I moved on to Angular. It's just Angular. Angular 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And before that, I also worked a little bit with C++, Java, Python, and other stuff. So if you're coming from other world, other programming languages, I hear you. I know how it feels like. Yeah, but I fell in love with Angular, and that's what I love to do until now. So what I do in my free time, I'm organizing NG Girls. So this is currently the main activity. It's workshops that are free for women who are beginners in the programming world. Maybe they're students. And they come and participate in this workshop. There's a tutorial that tells them how to build their very own Angular application from scratch. And they sit with mentors and just sit the whole day. And they have a working application by the end of the day. So that's really great. The mentors also volunteer. They're experienced web developers. They can be girls or guys. So if you're interested in this activity, we're doing workshops all around the world. I don't have to be in every workshop, so you can organize something by yourself, and I will help you, and I will give you all the resources. The next workshop we're going to have will be in Freiburg, here in Germany. And we're still looking for a few more mentors. That's going to be next week on Thursday. So if you're available, we'd love you to join us, and you can just come and talk to me later on. We're also trying to do other activities for more experienced developers. So if you have any ideas or if you want to help us, so please come talk to me. Another little thing that I do in my free time is I organize the Angular Nights meetup in Israel. It's a meetup that is about Angular, of course, and its ecosystem, and learning by doing, learning from through the keyboard with the fingers. So if you're in Israel, you're very welcome to come. And if you want to talk about anything that's related to web, to Angular and the ecosystem, then I'd love to have you. All right, so let's go back to our main topic today. Progressive web applications. So what is progressive web applications? Let me ask you, how many of you are already working, progressifying your web applications? Okay, great. We have quite a few. How many of you are working with web applications, developing web applications? Aha, okay, so all of you are going to progressify your web apps right after this talk. How many of you are working with Angular? Okay, great, so we're in the right place. So I'll give a bit of an intro about what progressive web application is, where it comes from, and then we'll start doing the demo. Okay, so a little bit of unofficial history. We're developing for the web, and we know that the browsers and the computers have become stronger in the past few years. So we have computers that can run really complicated logic and calculations, so we can do everything on the computer instead of on servers. The Wi-Fi connection that we're using is usually strong, so we can send a lot of data to the client and let the client deal with this data. Something that we like about web applications or websites is that they're linkable. If you enter a certain state in the application, then if this application, if it's, for example, a single-page application and it uses a router, then there's a specific URL for every state in this application, and you can just copy this and send it to your friends and share it. So you can share a state in the application, and that's really nice. And you can share the application itself, okay? Because eventually it's just a website. But that does a lot more than just show you text and images and maybe a few links. So it is very, very powerful. But like I said in a panel that we had in the morning, who doesn't have a mobile phone on him all the time, right? We don't always carry around our laptops, but we do have the mobile phone. And the mobile phones are like little computers. They're not like, they are actually little computers with also very strong capabilities. So we start using them for using applications, for managing our whole life, actually. And mobile applications have a lot of advantages to them. They're installable, so whenever you want to use the application, you have an icon and you just click it and it opens, right? So you don't have to search it or enter a URL. And it gives you notifications. So even if you haven't used the application for a long time, whenever something important happens, and it can notify you, just, give you this message and tells you, click on me, do something about it. So it's engageable. It's engaging the users. It uses the device API, and the devices that we have a lot of capabilities, a lot of hardware that we can use, the camera, the GPS location, of course, calling someone by the phone, NFC, and so on. So it can use all of this, the applications can use all of these features. So that's really great. But there are a few things that we started not really liking about native applications. And they also, they start improving. Okay, so some of the things here are getting better. So, for example, you need to search the application in the store. Okay, actually, this week I had a weird case where I was searching an application and I just couldn't find it. And I knew that it exists. So turns out that this application was not available in the region that I'm in, and I don't know how to change the region, and something there just went really wrong. So that was really, really weird. So So you have to use the store to search for or to download the application. Sometimes you can get a link to the store, so that's nice. The applications are not linkable. You can't enter a certain state in a native application, unlike the web applications that we talked about. You need permissions for everything. When you install the application, first thing, it tells you, okay, I need permission for your contacts, for your phone, to get pictures. Actually, now it's getting a lot better because you get notified for permissions before you do some action. So when you try to take a picture through the application for the first time, then it tells you, hey, this application needs your permission to take photos. But also the permissions that you get just when installing, it can be really frightening for the users. So so that's also a downside. And when you're using a web application, then it doesn't ask you anything because it doesn't have access to anything. Only when you actually try to use something on your, like the camera. And updates. Well, some updates can happen in the background, but most of the updates, especially if you need new permissions, then you have to click on it. Oh yeah, I want to update. Oh no, why is the update so large? Why do I have to download now 50 megabytes or 100 megabytes just to update the application? So, this really makes the users think again whether they want to update, whether they want to use the application, whether they want to install it. And of course, with mobile applications, you also need to think about whether you're developing for Android or iOS or something else. And you have different code bases maybe, and that's also a whole different story. So progressive web applications actually give you the best of both worlds. So the apps are linkable. You don't need to install them from the store, but you have the option to install them once you enter the application on the browser. And then you get an icon that you can just click and it will open the application. And if you use this, it can also give you a very native look and feel to the application. So at some point you might even forget that this is actually a web application running on the browser. And the updates are always done in the background, and also web applications now can access the native features, the hardware that you have on the phone. So that's great. And what's really, really great is that you write one application with one time you have to write your logic, your JavaScript, and it can run both on the computer or on the mobile phone. Okay? So we'll talk in a moment about the hardware that it can access, the camera and so on. These are the 10 pillars of progressive web applications. So what does it mean when you want your application to be progressive? So I'm not going to go over this really deeply. I'm just going to touch a few points here. Progressive, it uses new features, it uses the best practices and all the new things that the web allows us to do, the browsers allow us to do. It's discoverable. You can search it on the web, on Google, or any other search engine that you'd prefer. And you can find it because it's actually a website, but you can also find it on the store. The search engines, when they crawl the web, they recognize these web applications, which are progressive web applications, and some of them actually take this and show them on the store. Now, it might take time, okay, so you don't find them immediately, but eventually they'll be there. They're linkable, like I said, because they're web applications. They're app-like. So you as developers need to think about how to do the look and feel to make it more app-like, to use scrolling and menus the way you use in native applications. So you need a different version that will run on your mobile phone, a slightly different version, which is mostly on the display is a bit different, and maybe you will also have different features because things that look good on a big screen will not work on a little screen of the mobile. So you have to think about what features you allow on the mobile and what features you allow on the web, on the computers, on a large screen. So it's responsive. So the same idea here, that it will look good on every screen. Connectivity independent. Well, of course, the first time that you want to access the application, you'll need internet connection. But we're used to having our applications on the mobile working even when we're offline. So it can show you some data, you can perform some actions, and it can even save some actions that you do, so it will later on sync them to the server. So the same thing you can do with web applications. It's re-engageable. That's mostly about the notifications that I talked about. It's installable, like I said. It's fresh, and fresh means that it's not only that it's cool and fresh, but it also gives you the freshest data, the latest data from the server, if you're connected to a strong internet connection, to Wi-Fi or so on. On the other hand, it will not give you too much data. It will not load you with heavy communication because it will slow down the application on one hand. On the other hand, it might increase the battery usage, which is also something that we want to prevent in mobile applications, okay? So these are things that you need to think about when you develop a progressive web application, because when we're working with the computer, then we don't always think about it. We say, okay, we have the Wi-Fi connection, it doesn't really matter how much data is being sent to the computer. Okay, it might take a bit longer than usual if we have large chunks of data, so it's also not really great for the user, but usually the computers are connected to the electricity, so there's no problem with the battery and so on. Progressive web applications are safe. They're using safe, secure connection at HTTPS, and you have to keep it this way. They won't work. Like a lot of the features will not work if you're not using a safe connection. And of course, you have to think about other security issues that might be relevant for mobile applications. All right. So I talked about using the native mobile API with the web application. So you might think, hey, so the browser, does it have access to all these things? Well, yes. The browser has access to a lot of the things. It can do a lot of things that the mobile can do. It is very strong nowadays. Now, it's not perfect still. But this is taken from a website called What Web Can Do Today. I'm sorry, the link was in a different color. It's whatwebcando.today. And yeah. And it gets updated all the time. Okay, so you can see that we have, of course, geolocation, we have offline mode, local notifications. Now, like you probably noticed all these websites that ask you for permission to show notifications even on the computer, not on your mobile. Okay, so I have a slide about it later on, so keep this in mind. It asks for permissions. What if it can use Bluetooth, camera, audio, recording media, a lot of stuff. Okay, so there are things that still the browsers don't have access to, like NFC, but it's not a lot. We really can have a very, very rich web application running on the mobile and feeling like a native mobile application. If you want to hear more about the features of progressive web applications, about how to do them, build them the right way, which features to think about, this guy, Chris Hillman, he gave a really, really great talk in JS Poland last June. And he really talks about all the aspects of progressive web application. It gives really, really great points, great ideas. So I really recommend you watching this talk. Okay, so to go deeper, this is the guy, one of them. There are lots of great resources on the web for telling you best practices and so on. So let's go to do some actions. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so how do we test if our web application is progressive enough? There are several tools, but one of the most popular is Lighthouse. It is a tool developed by Google. It was first available as a Chrome extension, but now it's actually built into Chrome in the DevTools. And if you don't want to use Chrome or don't want to use it through the DevTools, then you can install it via npm or yarn or whatever and use it through the command line. So we're going to use Lighthouse to test our application. And our application is a demo application, which is a song book. And this is the icon. And you can actually access it through this link right now. But now the deployed version is not progressive at all. It's a very basic version, and I'll show you in a moment. So what I'm using to develop this application. So of course, on the front end, I'm using Angular. And this talk is about Angular and Angular CLI and the tools that they give you to help you progressify your application. They automatically give you, they test your application, and they can build, for example, the service worker for you. So we'll see how it's done there. I'm using Angular Material for the components to have a nice look and feel for the application. I'm not a designer, so this really helps me if I want to quickly have an application that looks well both on the big screen and on the mobile. And I'm using a library that actually comes with kind of comes with an Angular material. You install it together, which is called Flex Layout. And I'll talk about it in a moment, because there's a very important feature that Flex Layout gives us. I've also installed the package Angular Service Worker, which will, with the help of the Angular CLI, gives us the service worker, and we'll talk about this in a few moments. On the back end, so I'm a front-end developer. I use serverless write serverless applications, but they're not really serverless. You need the server, you need the database, you need somewhere to deploy it. So I'm using Firebase, and I host the application there. I use the authentication. Specifically in this application, I use the authentication with Google, and it's really just a few lines of code, really minimal configuration to do this. I'm using the database, and we'll talk about the database also. We can use storage. Actually, in this case, I'm not using the storage, but it gives you free storage for files, images, and so on. And I'm using Cloud Functions, which is a relatively new feature. It was announced last March, and it really gives you what was really missing in Firebase until then, giving you the option to add some logic to the server side. Because there are some things that you don't want to do on the client because of security reasons, because you have web developers who know how to open the DevTools and change your code, right? So you do want to do stuff on the server, and it also allows you other things like sending notifications. So you do this from the server. And the Cloud Functions, they have triggers. So the functions run whenever there's a change in the database, whenever a new user is registered to your web application. It has triggers connected to the storage whenever you upload an image, for example. So it can take the image and process it using Google Cloud API. So there's also integration with Google Cloud, and check whether the image is appropriate or not, and do something about it, give you the result. There's so much that you can do with Cloud Functions, and it really gives you the missing part in the serverless server application. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Firebase, by the way, is it's a really great platform that you can use. And the connection is already secure. It uses HTTPS and HTTP2. So you can really leverage these new features. So it's free if your application is small and you don't have a lot of users, but once it starts to grow, then you start to pay. But it also gives you the option to get revenue from your application, for example, to use AdWords. So it's really something that if you don't have a service side yet, then it's really something you should start looking into. It's not. It's good for demo applications like I do here, but also real projects, real big projects, big companies use it for their applications. So check it out. Okay. So this is the initial state. I'm going to show you the application first, and we'll run the Lighthouse audit on it. So this is the application. It's a songbook, and basically it just has a list of songs, and it shows you the lyrics. And to be able to add a song, you need to sign in. And right now the option with email and password does not work, so you can sign in only with Google. So I'm signing in, and I need to choose some kind of one of my many Google accounts. And then we can also add a song. So is there a song that you want to add now? Something? What's that? Knocking on Heaven's Door. We don't have it here? No. Okay. Knocking on... Oh, with a K. Sorry. Forgot the K. Okay. Let's take the lyrics. Okay. Okay, so I'm adding a song here. And adding the lyrics. Oh, yeah, that's the one. And it's supposed to be saved. Maybe, oh, some of you already put test songs here, right? Okay, so this app is not really perfect. And the thing is, I don't use the real-time. I use the real-time database, but I access it with a JSON API, REST API. That's because of the caching with the service worker. I'll explain this a bit later. But so some things are not updated immediately, and that's maybe we'll change it in later versions. So the reason I decided to write this application and to progressify it is because a lot of times I go to trips in the wild with friends, and we stay there at night. We have a campfire, and someone brings a guitar, and we start singing songs, right? And we're waiting for the food to be ready, and we just we want to sing some songs. And of course, we don't have Wi-Fi connection. We don't have internet connection even. Okay, so it's difficult to get the data. So we want some of the songs to be available offline. So when you're online, you can just save the songs that you want. And when you're offline, if you've looked at the songs that you've been watching, they are cached, and you can open them offline. So right now, it will not work. And let's perform an audit on this application. So here in the DevTools, I hope you can see. I can also get it a little bigger. Okay. So in the Audit tab, we have Lighthouse, Perform an Audit, Run Audit. And let's see how not progressive our web application is. Okay. So it actually runs the application as if it were on mobile, on low internet connection. It checks what happens if there's no connection at all, if you're offline. It measures performance. It measures the time until you get the initial view of the application. There are a lot of things that it measures. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time. And in the meantime, okay. So this was the result a few weeks ago. The result might change. There's might be something a bit different. But let's see the results now. Okay. 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 Takes time. Okay. So let's talk about the app shell in the meantime. I'm sorry, this is now going to be a little bit going back and forth because of Lighthouse. So I hope you keep up with the presentation, with what I'm talking about, and remembering what Lighthouse was checking, on which version we're on. Okay, so app shell is giving you the initial load of the application, the HTML and CSS, that as long as the JavaScript isn't loaded and isn't ready, it can show something to the user. So let's see. Okay. So we got 45 on progressive web app, 67 on performance. Accessibility and best practices pretty high. Okay, cool. But if we go to metrics, then we see that the first meaningful paint is after almost 5 seconds. Okay, so for for the first 4 seconds, we have a blank page, and this is horrible. Like the user doesn't know what's happening, and only then we have something showing up, the header, and after 5 seconds we have the content. So this is not really great, and we want to fix it with the app shell. So at least to have some kind of a spinner, we can have a header already because it's static. We don't need any logic to have the header of the application. Okay, so actually, this is something that you might use Angular tools like Angular Universal to build to get your app shell. But you can also do this by yourself. So here I have a style for a loader, for a spinner. And I have the spinner itself. So I'm going to source index.html. I'm going to add here the style. Okay. Oops. I'm adding also. Okay. So SB root, I'm using here the prefix SB for songbook. So when Angular is ready and has all the logic and all the components that it needs, then it will show the content, the component itself, the SB root. But as long as Angular is not ready, the JavaScript is not ready, then it will show what's inside this element. Okay? So if we put some regular HTML in this, then this is the thing that we'll see. Okay? We can see this offline, ng-serve, in the local host. Okay? Not really offline. And we're also going to build this and deploy and test it with Lighthouse again. Okay. Okay, let's open the local host so you'll see what I'm adding here. Here's the spinner, and you already have also the header. No, it was too fast. Okay. So I'm going to deploy it. So let's stop this. So first, ng build for production. Okay. So this will build our whole application, and we'll put it in the dist folder. Now I already have Firebase tools installed here, and I use it here. I have Firebase.json telling me how the Firebase tools work in this application. So I'm using the database rules. I'm using the hosting, and I'm also using cloud functions here. So you see I have an inner mini project of functions. Okay, so I built the application, and it's supposed to be here in this, and we can see that in index.html, it has now all the style and what I added inside the root element. So I just do Firebase deploy only hosting, because I didn't change anything in the functions or in the database rules. And so in just a few moments, it will deploy, and you'll be able to already see the new version. So you'll have to, if you're watching it on your mobile application, then you'll have to refresh. So we'll also refresh it here. Let's do empty cache and hard reload. Let's open it again, audit, and perform an audit. Okay, let's see if anything has changed. Okay, we have the spinner. Let's give it the time it needs to run. Okay, so so this is the state that we want to reach to have an initial load very quickly. First meaningful paint. And in the meantime, while Lighthouse is working, I'm going to talk about Flex Layout that I promised from before. Okay. So let me open this application in a new tab and show you something. Okay. So we have this song, the list of the songs. And when you open it on a large screen, then it is initially opened, and you can minimize it. You can like close this menu, the sidebar. But if you have it on mobile phone, and we have to refresh to do this, okay, then the initial view is with the side nav closed, and with an option, of course, to open it, okay, and to select a song. So the side nav is a feature that comes with, it's one of the components that comes with Angular material. And I'm using it here, songbook songbook component. Okay, yeah, here it is. The sign up. No, sorry. Yeah. Okay, this is the Angular Materials side nav, and it gets a flag whether it starts opened or closed, and it gets also a mode of whether, when it's opened, whether there's a backdrop, whether the content is pushed to the side or the side nav is opened over the content. And because we're using Angular, then I can bind my variables to it. So I'm using binding here for opened and for mode. But we're using it here in the JavaScript part, not in the CSS. If it was something in the style in CSS, what would we use to change the style in different views? We would use media queries, right? If it's a small screen, do this. If it's a large screen, do that. But here we can't do this. So I'm using Flex Layout and specifically observable media. So Flex Layout is a whole library that gives us Flexbox features that we can use in our templates. So everything you know from Flexbox, it gives us directives to use them directly from the template in Angular. But the observable media gives us a feature that just tells us what kind of screen the user uses. So we, of course, inject it here. And on init, we ask it whether the screen is extra small. If it is extra small, then we want to start with a list closed. So list open is false. And the side nav mode will be push. And if it's open, if the screen is large, like larger than extra small, then it will start with the list open and the side nav mode will be side. So this is really, really powerful to use in Angular applications because material design needs it in this part of the application and not in the CSS. Okay, so let's see what Lighthouse gave us. Okay, so remember we had 45 on Progressive Web App. So we have now an improvement of 10 points. So that's really awesome. Let's see the metrics. So in 1 second, we already have some kind of a view for the user. Still, Lighthouse doesn't call it a first meaningful paint. It still recognizes that the meaningful paint comes after we have some data, but that's okay. At least we can see something. We can see that the application is working. Okay, so let's go on. So this was Flex Layout. Okay, now to this is also something that is relevant to all web applications, not only to Angular applications, the app manifest. So if you just add this manifest.json, with some configuration, then you can give it the icon that will be used if the user installs the application. It will give also the option to install the application on the mobile or on the computer even. And it will also give the look and feel of the browser. So the browser itself can get the colors that you choose for your application. So that's really cool. Now, guess what color is my favorite? All right. So let's do this. And then we're going, that's a spoiler. And while we're auditing it, we'll also talk about the manifest itself. So let's first add it. So in source, I'm adding a new file, manifest.json. Okay. Yes, I'll add it to Git, all right. Now I have the content here. Scratch. One of the scratches. No. Scratch 7. No. Sorry. Okay. This is the one. Okay. So it's a very simple JSON where you basically add colors and icons and some description about your application. So I'm just going to copy what I already did. There are also, well, you can find it on the web, some examples for how to build this manifest. Really, really simple. Where is my manifest file? Here it is. Okay. So I have this, and it tells me that it's okay. And I have to add it to Angular CLI JSON to the assets, so that when we build the application, it will also take this file, okay? As a resource. Manifest.json. Okay, let's build it, and let's see just a little bit what we have in this manifest. Here it is. Okay, so for example, we have the direction left to right. You can also say right to left. The language, the name of the application, a theme color, which is purple, of course. A background color, that's when the application starts, when you install it. Then the view, it will give you the icon and with a background color. Let's deploy it to Firebase. Okay. And you need to give it a list of icons. Oh, I hope that I added. Yeah, they're all in assets, so it's okay. It's already added in the Angular CLI. Let us reload the application and audit it now. Perform an audit. Okay. Another thing that you can see actually, if you open the DevTools, okay, you can go to Application and see whether there's a manifest or not. Oh, no manifest? What? Oh, not deployed yet? No, it is. So I need to do this again? Okay, it's supposed to... I hope it's there. Oh, no. I forgot to do something very, very important. Sorry. I forgot to add it to call it in the HTML, in the index HTML. Okay. So I'll need to build and deploy it again. So again, index HTML. We go somewhere here in the head. do this here. Okay. So this actually gets the manifest, loads the manifest for us, and also gives a theme color if you're using the browser. So sorry, we have to do this again. I always forget this little part, but then when I try to show that there's a manifest, then that's the way that. Okay, oh, that's what I forgot. Okay. Let's go back to the manifest in the meantime. So you need different icons in different sizes for all the devices that you're going to use. And there are, of course, services on the web, free services that you give them an icon, your own little picture that you did. And then it, let's run the audit again, sorry. And then, oops, I want to do hard reload. And then it generates the whole, all the different icons that you need. Okay, performance, no, application. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we have a manifest, and it gives you the start URL, theme color, background color, and so on. Okay, here are the icons, all the list of icons that I have here. Okay, so I only had to draw this once, and I used the website to generate all the icons. Okay, let's see. It's taking time, of course. Retrieving trace. Soon. Okay, what was the score before? 55, right? Okay, hopefully it will be increased a little bit. Okay, you see that it's doing a lot of things. How much? Okay, we need to do a few more things before we can finish. Okay. Let's see, the next step will be adding a service worker. So I'll talk about service worker in the meantime. So service worker is also a new feature that is implemented in browsers. Now, I have to say a word about browsers. In Apple, they didn't really care about progressive web applications until very recently. About 2 months ago, they gave they said that they're going to support progressive web applications, and they're going to give the ability to use service workers in the applications and all the other features, because they realized that everybody wants to use them, everybody wants to write progressive web applications. Okay, so let us see okay, 73 now, pretty good. Okay, so the service worker is a file, a JavaScript file that runs in the background, and it is a proxy between your application and the server and the internet. Okay, so you can cache data there. And it also works offline, and it even works when the browser is actually closed. Okay, so it runs in the background whenever your phone or your computer is on. So the way we do this with Angular, in Angular CLI, we add here to our app. We tell it to use service worker. So worker true. Okay. And this will already build a very minimal service worker, which goes through our application and checks all the assets, the static assets that we're using. And it tells, like, the service worker knows how to cache them. And we're using, because the service workers can be really, really, really large files, we're using here a service worker manifest, which tells Angular, the service worker library in Angular, it tells it how to build the actual service worker. So this is the Angular service worker that is created. So it has the static URLs of everything that we're using. So we have material icons, polyfills, main, all the app icons that we've added. All these can be cached now in the service worker. And the service worker itself, this is the file, worker basic, which is a really, really long file. Okay. Now, we want to add some capabilities to the service worker. We want to cache also. We want to cache dynamic assets, and we also need to tell it what are our routes, because it may cache the index HTML, but it doesn't know that when we route, because it's a single page application, it doesn't realize that all the routes are supposed to go to index HTML. Okay, so I'm creating a new file in the root of the application. And I'm supposed to have here another Scratch file for this. Yeah. So in this JSON, let me just build it again in the meantime. Okay. So in this JSON file, I'm telling it what routes we have. And there will also be Angular tools that will go over your application and identify the routes by itself. So right now I'm doing this manually, but you will be able to do this automatically with the tools. I'm telling it what dynamic assets I'm using. So here comes the reason why I'm not using the real-time database in Firebase, because when you use WebSockets, then it doesn't go through the service worker. So just to show that it works, I'm using here the REST API, the regular REST API. But if you want to use the real-time database, then just either use IndexedDB instead of the service worker to cache the data, or use the new feature that they have, the new database, which is called Firestore, which already has these capabilities built in. Okay, so right now, if I'm not refreshing this, and we were looking at knocking on heaven's door, and I'm gonna turn off the Wi-Fi for a moment, and I'll go to some other song. It will not load, and we were knocking on heaven's door, and it doesn't load, right? But if I'm turning it right back on, and I'll refresh the application now, okay. Then it's supposed to also work offline. Okay, so we're knocking on heaven's door. Let's also go to Dust in the Wind and Heal the World. Let's turn off the Wi-Fi. Okay, let's go somewhere else. Virtual Insanity, it didn't cache it. We weren't there. But Heal the World, oh man. Come on, did I do it right? Let's see. Sorry? Yeah, so Angular CLI gives it reference it in index HTML. It calls here the service worker register, so it was supposed to be there. Okay, maybe I didn't reload it. Oh, yeah. Okay, I guess it just didn't reload correctly. Okay, again, empty cache. Okay, we'll just run the audit on it in the meantime. And hopefully it was okay. Let's check it here. Where is that? What? What did I do? Okay, cancel. Again, run audit. Okay, it's running. Oh, I can't turn the Wi-Fi off because the audit will be ruined. What happened here? Let's do this again. Okay, this is supposed to be the last step. Come on, don't fail on me now. Okay. So like I said, once you put service worker true in the Angular CLI, when it builds, it adds the service worker registration file. You can see also that all the files have now their hash in their names. So the service worker also works this way. If a file is changed, then the hash is changed, and that's how you know whether whether it needs to reload it or it can use it from the cache. What else? Okay. When you cache the dynamic resources, then you have configuration for optimization for freshness or performance, whether to always look for the new file or take from the cache first. Max entries, max age, when the data will become stale. Strategy, for example, here it's least recently used. There's also an option to cache outside resources, for example, icons or fonts, but I didn't use it here. So it takes this JSON that I've written, it adds it to the JSON to the software service worker manifest that it builds by itself. Okay, so it has also the static URLs here. And it builds a service worker and adds it to index.html. Now, it might be better practice to load the service worker not in index.html, but in your Angular application after you bootstrap your application. Because bootstrapping your application, and I will show you this really, really quickly. Where's the source? In the main TS. When you do this bootstrap module, it actually returns a promise, and then it's best to load the service worker. Okay, let's see. Oh my God. Okay, we have 100 on progressive web applications. We have 100 on best practices. There's still some things to do with performance and accessibility. Now, a few notes just. I know that it's past my hour already. Okay, so we had really, really boost in the progressiveness of our application. So we talked about most of these features. We didn't really talk about notifications, but one thing that I want you to know, well, two things. First of all, the notifications also work through the service worker, so you can use it for that. But really try to think about your users. This is a screenshot of my mobile at one day that I just didn't have time to open the Twitter, and it has more than 37 notifications only from Twitter, and I don't know what to do with it. Like, I have to go one by one because I don't want to miss anything. So please think about your users when you do this. More in progressive webs and applications in Angular. So in version 5, which is now in release candidate, they actually bake the progressive web application tools. For example, the service worker into Angular, so you will use it directly and not through Angular CLI. You should check out Workbox 2, which is a service also given by Google, which helps you with any kind of application, not only Angular. Firestore. I talked about Firestore, a new way to store your data in Firebase. And IndexedDB, I also mentioned that. Sorry, now it's Firestore. And with Angular Fire 2, also they're releasing version 5 of Angular Fire, which gives you Angular API to use Firestore. And a very, very recommended resource for learning about progressive web applications, and specifically with Angular, is this guy, Maxim Salnikov. And he's giving a lot of training about progressive web applications with Angular. So he's always keeping things up to date. So you can tweet him, you can check out his resources. And he also manages this Slack channel to just answer all your questions and to give tips and new news about this subject. So I'm sorry that I took a bit more of your time, but if you want to ask me questions, if you want to show me new features or anything, you're very welcome to write to me, find me on Twitter. And I have the demo application is actually on my GitHub, so you can check it out. And I hope you're going to now run back home and progressify your web applications, right? All right, thank you. Thank you very much.